Admiral Kim Tae-ho stood at the observation window of the orbital station New Seoul. The Earth floated below him, blue and green and beautiful. He had spent 30 years protecting that world. He had believed that humanity had finally found peace among the stars. He was wrong. The transmission came at exactly midnight. The holographic display flickered to life, showing the symbol of the Galactic Council. Tae-ho had seen that symbol many times before. It had always meant cooperation. It had always meant friendship. Tonight, it meant death. The message was cold and official. The Galactic Council had voted unanimously to classify humanity as a developmental threat. The Council believed that humans were too aggressive. They grew too fast. They learned too quickly. They were dangerous to the balance of the galaxy. The punishment was absolute. Earth would be quarantined. All human colonies on other planets would be shut down. Human technology would be taken away. Humanity would be pushed back to a time before they could travel through space. They would be prisoners on their own world forever. Tae-ho read the message 3 times. His hands did not shake. His face did not change. But inside, something cold and hard began to form in his chest. 50 years ago, humanity had joined the Galactic Council. They had proven themselves through science and peace. They had followed every rule. They had been good allies. And now, the Council had decided to erase them. 3,000 kilometers away, in a laboratory beneath the desert of Nevada, Dr. Park Yuna was working late. She was monitoring alien communication channels, something she was not supposed to do. But Yuna had never trusted the Council completely. She had always believed they were hiding something. The intercepted transmission made her blood turn cold. The quarantine was a lie. It was a cover story for something much worse. The Council had secretly given permission to the Helix Empire to conduct what they called a cleansing operation. The Helix were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors. They had destroyed hundreds of species. And now, they were coming for Earth. Humanity was not being contained. Humanity was being exterminated. Yuna immediately contacted Colonel Shin Hana, the director of Earth Intelligence Services. Hana was a woman who never showed fear, but when she heard the news, her face became pale. Within 1 hour, Hana's intelligence network confirmed the truth. 47 Helix warships had already left their home system. They were coming to Earth at full speed. They would arrive in 96 hours, 4 days. That was all the time humanity had left. The President of the United States called an emergency meeting. Leaders from every nation joined through secure video links. The room was filled with powerful people, but power meant nothing against an alien fleet that had conquered 1,000 worlds. Some leaders wanted to negotiate. Maybe they could offer something. Maybe they could beg for mercy. But Colonel Hana showed them the intercepted messages. The Helix did not take prisoners. They did not negotiate. They only destroyed. Other leaders wanted to run. Perhaps some ships could escape. Perhaps a few thousand humans could hide somewhere in the galaxy. But where would they go? The Council controlled everything. There was nowhere to run. Admiral Tae-ho listened to the arguments. He watched the fear spread through the room like a disease. He thought about his wife, who had died 10 years ago. He thought about his daughter, who was a teacher in Seoul. He thought about the 8 billion people on Earth who had no idea that death was coming for them. Finally, he stood up. The room became silent. Tae-ho spoke slowly and clearly. He said that humanity had 2 choices. They could accept their fate and die quietly, or they could fight. The odds were terrible. Their enemy was powerful. Victory seemed impossible. But surrender was not an option he was willing to consider. He looked at each leader in the room. He asked them a simple question. What kind of species did they want to be? The kind that knelt down and waited for death? Or the kind that stood up and faced their enemy with fire in their eyes? The vote was unanimous. Admiral Tejo was given full command of all Earth forces. Every nation would work together. Every resource would be shared. Every person who could fight would fight. For the first time in human history, there were no countries. There were no borders. There was only humanity. Tejo returned to New Sol Station. He began sending orders to every ship, every base, every soldier. The United Earth Fleet had 300 warships. Against 47 Helix vessels, that might seem like good odds. But each Helix ship was 10 times the size of a human ship. Each one carried weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. Dr. Park Yuna was already working on something that might help. For years, her team had been secretly developing a forbidden weapon. The Council had banned it. They called it too dangerous. Yuna called it the Cascade device. It could make alien ship engines explode from the inside. It was untested. It might not work, but it was their only hope. Colonel Hana reached out to her secret contacts in the galaxy. Not every alien agreed with the Council. One of them, Ambassador Drexa, was willing to help. Drexa sent stolen information about the Helix fleet. The information included one important detail. The Helix flagship controlled the entire fleet through a special network. If that ship was destroyed, the fleet would fall apart. Humanity had found a target. Now they needed a miracle. Admiral Tejo stood alone at the observation window. Earth was still beautiful below him. He made a silent promise to that world. He would protect it. He would fight for it. He would die for it if necessary. But he would not let humanity disappear quietly into the darkness of space. The order had been given. The order for humanity's survival. The war had begun. 96 hours. That was all the time humanity had before the Helix Armada arrived. In those hours, the entire human race transformed. Fear became fuel. Panic became purpose. Every factory, every laboratory, every military base worked without stopping. Admiral Kim Tejo did not sleep. He stood in the command center of New Sol Station, watching reports come in from every corner of Earth. Ships were being armed. Soldiers were being trained. Weapons were being built. Humanity was preparing for the greatest battle in its history. Dr. Park Yuna worked in the underground bunkers beneath Nevada. Her eyes were red from exhaustion. Her hands trembled from too much coffee, but she could not stop. The Cascade device was their only real weapon against the Helix, and it was not ready. The device worked by sending a special energy wave into alien ship engines. This wave would make the engines unstable. They would explode from the inside. In theory, one small device could destroy a massive warship, but theory was not enough. Yuna needed proof. On the third night, she finally got it. A test device was fired at an old alien engine that humans had captured years ago. The engine exploded beautifully. Yuna allowed herself to smile for exactly 3 seconds. Then she went back to work. They needed to build dozens of these devices before the Helix arrived. Captain Lee Minho received his orders on the second day. He was the commander of the USS Defiance, one of the newest ships in the human fleet. His mission was simple and terrible. He would take 50 ships to Neptune. There, he would try to slow down the Helix advance. Minho gathered his crew and told them the truth. They were not expected to win. They were not expected to survive. Their job was to buy time. Every hour they delayed the enemy was another hour for Earth to prepare. He asked if anyone wanted to leave. No one moved, no one spoke. Every single crew member chose to stay. The Defiance and her sister ships left Earth orbit at midnight. Minho watched the blue planet grow smaller in the rear cameras. He wondered if he would ever see it again. He decided it did not matter. What mattered was that Earth would still be there after he was gone. General Choi Dongwoo was in charge of ground defenses. He was an old soldier who had fought in many wars, but he had never prepared for anything like this. Every major city on Earth became a fortress. Buildings were reinforced. Underground shelters were dug. Weapons were handed out to anyone who could hold them. Old people, young people, teachers, farmers, office workers. Everyone became a soldier. Dongwu knew that if the helix reached the surface, the fighting would be brutal. Alien soldiers were bigger and stronger than humans. Their weapons were more advanced, but humans had something the helix did not understand. They had everything to lose, and people who have everything to lose fight harder than anyone. Lieutenant Kang Sora was 26 years old. She was one of the best pilots in the human fleet. When she heard about the mission, she volunteered immediately. Ghost Squadron was being formed for a suicide mission. 16 pilots would fly small fighters directly into the helix formation. Their job was to deliver the cascade devices to enemy ships. The chances of survival were almost zero. Sora did not care about the odds. She thought about her younger brother, who was studying medicine in Seoul. She thought about her parents, who had a small restaurant in Busan. She thought about the future they deserved to have. She would give them that future, whatever the cost. Colonel Shin Hana worked in the shadows. Her intelligence network spread across the galaxy, gathering information. Most of their alien contacts had gone silent, too afraid to help, but Ambassador Drexa continued to send secret messages. Drexa was an alien who believed the Council had made a terrible mistake. She did not think humanity deserved to die. She knew that helping them was treason. She did it anyway. The information Drexa provided was precious. She sent the layout of the Helix flagship, the Eternal Judgment. She sent the location of its weak points. She sent the codes that could temporarily disable its shields. This information could mean the difference between victory and extinction. Hana asked Drexa why she was helping them. The answer was simple. Drexa had studied humans for many years. She had seen their art, their music, their stories. She believed that a species capable of such beauty did not deserve to be destroyed. On the final day before battle, Admiral Taiho addressed all of humanity. His message was broadcast to every screen, every radio, every device on Earth and beyond. He did not promise victory. He did not hide the danger. He told the truth. The enemy was powerful. Many would die. The coming days would be the hardest in human history. But he also reminded them who they were. Humans had survived ice ages and plagues. They had survived wars and disasters. They had climbed out of caves and reached for the stars. They were not a species that gave up easily. He ended with words that would be remembered for centuries. He said that the galaxy had made a mistake. They thought humanity was weak. They thought humans would surrender. They were wrong. Humanity would show them what happens when you threaten Earth. Humanity would teach them why they should have been afraid. The message ended. Across the world, people looked at each other. Strangers hugged strangers. Old enemies shook hands. For one moment, all of humanity was united by a single feeling. They were ready to fight. The Helix Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Neptune. Warlord Korath stood on the bridge of the Eternal Judgment. He expected to find a primitive species trembling in fear. Instead, he found Captain Lee Minho and 50 human ships blocking his path. The storm had gathered. Now it was time to see who would survive. Warlord Korath looked at the human ships with amusement. 50 small vessels stood between his armada and Earth. It was like watching insects try to stop a flood. He almost felt sorry for them. Almost. He gave the order to attack. His ships moved forward like a wave of death. Their weapons began to charge, glowing with terrible energy. One shot from a helix cannon could cut a human ship in half. But Captain Lee Minho was not afraid. He had studied the helix for days. He knew their tactics. He knew their weaknesses. Most importantly, he knew something the helix did not expect. Human ships were smaller, but they were faster, and Minho had no intention of fighting fair. The Battle of Neptune's Gate began with a surprise. Instead of meeting the helix head-on, The human ships scattered. They flew into the rings of Neptune, hiding among the ice and rock. The helix sensors struggled to track them. The debris field was too thick. Korath was annoyed, but not worried. He ordered his ships to enter the rings and hunt the humans down. This was his first mistake. Inside the rings, size became a disadvantage. The massive helix ships could not move quickly. They bumped into asteroids. They blocked each other's weapons. Meanwhile, the human ships darted between rocks like fish in a coral reef. Minho gave the signal. The human ships attacked from every direction at once. They struck fast, hit weak points, and disappeared before the helix could respond. It was not a battle, it was a hunt, and the humans were the hunters. The first helix ship exploded after 2 hours of fighting, then another, then 3 more. Korath watched in disbelief. His mighty warships were being destroyed by vessels a fraction of their size. He pulled his fleet out of the rings and changed tactics. If the humans wanted to hide, he would force them out. He ordered his ships to bombard the entire debris field. Millions of tons of ice and rock were vaporized. The human ships had to retreat. They fled toward Neptune's largest moon, Triton, but Minho had prepared for this too. Hidden bases on Triton launched missiles at the Helix fleet. Nuclear warheads struck 3 more enemy ships. Korath was angry now. This was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be a simple extermination. Instead, he was losing ships to a species that should not have been able to fight back. He ordered his entire fleet to focus fire on the human formation. There would be no more games. He would crush them with overwhelming power. The next 6 hours were brutal. Human ships exploded one by one. Crews fought until their last breath. Some ships, too damaged to escape, turned around and rammed directly into enemy vessels. If they were going to die, they would take Helix ships with them. Captain Minho watched his fleet shrink. 50 ships became 40, then 30, then 20. Each lost ship was a crew of brave people who would never go home. But they were winning. Not the battle, but the war of time. Every hour they fought was another hour for Earth. Every Helix ship they destroyed was one less ship attacking their home. On the 16th hour, Minho counted his remaining ships. He had 16 left. The Helix had lost 31 vessels. It was an incredible exchange rate. But it was not enough. Korath's remaining ships regrouped. They were still too many. They were still too powerful. The human fleet had done everything possible, but the end was coming. Minho called his remaining captains. He thanked them for their courage. He told them they had already become legends. Then he gave them a choice. They could retreat and live. Or they could make one final attack. Every captain chose to attack. The 16 human ships charged directly at the Helix supply convoy. These were not warships, but carriers filled with fuel and ammunition. Without supplies, the Helix fleet would be weakened for the battle at Earth. Korath realized the danger too late. He screamed orders, but his ships could not react fast enough. The humans were too fast, too determined. Minho's ship, the USS Defiance, was hit multiple times during the charge. Fire spread through the corridors. Systems failed. Crew members died at their stations. But the ship kept flying. Minho kept pushing forward. The Defiance reached the convoy. Minho activated the self-destruct sequence. He had exactly 30 seconds. He thought about his wife waiting for him on Earth. He thought about his son, who was only 7 years old. He thought about the life he would never have. Then he smiled. His son would grow up free. His wife would live in a world that still existed. That was worth everything. The Defiance exploded in the center of the supply convoy. The chain reaction consumed 7 Helix carriers. Fuel and ammunition detonated in a massive fireball that could be seen from Mars. When the light faded, the human fleet was gone. All 50 ships had been destroyed, but they had taken 38 Helix vessels with them. More importantly, they had delayed the Armada for 12 critical hours. Korath sat in silence on his bridge. He had won the battle, but it did not feel like victory. He had lost more ships to these humans than in his last 10 conquests combined. For the first time in his long career, he felt something strange. He felt doubt. On Earth, Admiral Tejo received the final message from Neptune. Captain Minho's last words were simple. He said they had done their job. He said Earth should be ready. He said he was proud to be human. Tejo stood alone and mourned for 1 minute. Then he returned to work. Minho and his crews had given them time. He would not waste a single second. The Helix fleet turned toward Earth. They were wounded but still deadly. They would arrive in 12 hours. The final battle was coming, and humanity was ready to meet it. The Helix Armada entered Earth's orbit at dawn. 9 massive warships remained, along with dozens of smaller vessels. They had expected an easy victory at Neptune. Instead, they had lost nearly half their fleet, but they were still powerful enough to destroy a world. Admiral Kim Tejo stood in the command center of New Sol Station. Around him, officers worked frantically at their screens. 250 human ships waited in formation. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they were home, and home was worth dying for. Tejo opened a channel to the enemy fleet. His message was broadcast across all frequencies. He told the Helix that they had made a terrible mistake. He told them that every human would fight until their last breath. He told them that even if they won, they would never forget the price they paid. Warlord Korath did not respond. He simply gave the order to attack. The battle for Earth began with fire. Helix weapons struck the first line of human ships. Explosions lit up the darkness of space. Human vessels broke apart, but others took their place. For every ship that fell, 2 more moved forward to fill the gap. Lieutenant Kang Sora waited with Ghost Squadron behind Earth's moon. 16 small fighters, each carrying a cascade device. Their mission was simple: reach the Eternal Judgment, destroy its engine core, end the battle. The signal came after 2 hours of fighting. The main fleet had created an opening in the Helix formation. Ghost Squadron launched. Sora pushed her fighter to maximum speed. Around her, 15 other pilots did the same. They flew in a tight formation, using debris from destroyed ships as cover. Helix sensors struggled to track such small targets in the chaos. The first pilot died after 10 minutes. His fighter was hit by a random shot. He did not even have time to scream. Then another pilot fell. Then another. The space around them was filled with death. Sora did not look back. She could not afford to think about her friends dying behind her. She had to focus on the target. The Eternal Judgment was ahead, massive and terrible. Its weapons fired constantly, destroying everything in sight. 11 pilots died in the first hour. Then 8 more fell in the next 30 minutes. Sora looked around and realized she was alone. All her squadron members were gone. She was the last one. Her fighter was damaged. One engine was failing. Her shields were at 20%, but she was close, so close. The Eternal Judgment's point defense systems locked onto her. Hundreds of small weapons opened fire. Sora flew like she had never flown before. She twisted and turned, avoiding shots that should have been impossible to dodge. Her father had always said she was born to fly. Now she proved him right. She reached the flagship's engine section. The weak point Ambassador Drexa had identified was right in front of her. Sora armed the cascade device and prepared to fire. A Helix fighter appeared from nowhere. Its weapons struck her ship. Alarms screamed. Fire erupted in her cockpit. But Sora did not stop. With her last moment of control, she launched the cascade device. The small weapon entered the engine core of the Eternal Judgment. For 1 heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the ship began to shake. The cascade effect spread through the flagship's systems. Energy feedback loops destroyed generators. Reactors went critical. The mighty Eternal Judgment, the pride of the Helix fleet, began to tear itself apart from the inside. The fleet coordination network died with the flagship. Suddenly, Helix ships could not communicate. They could not share targeting data. They began firing wildly, sometimes hitting their own allies. Chaos spread through the entire armada. Sora's fighter, caught in the explosion, spiraled toward Earth. She managed to eject before it crashed. Her escape pod fell through the atmosphere, burning like a meteor. She landed in the Pacific Ocean, unconscious but alive. On the surface, General Choi Dongwoo commanded the ground defense. Even with the Helix fleet in chaos, enemy landing ships reached Earth. Alien soldiers poured onto the streets of major cities. Houston fell first. The fighting was brutal. Human soldiers held every building, every street corner. They used knowledge of their own cities against the invaders. But the Helix were too strong. After 18 hours, Houston was lost. Tokyo fought for a full day. The people there refused to surrender even when surrounded. Old people picked up weapons. Children helped carry supplies. When the city finally fell, not a single block had been given up without a fight. Moscow held longer than anyone expected. The defenders used the cold winter to their advantage. Helix soldiers, designed for warmer climates, struggled in the freezing temperatures. But eventually, Moscow fell too. But every fallen city cost the Helix dearly. They lost soldiers they could not replace. They lost time they did not have. And Dr. Park Yuna had given the humans one more gift. The cascade frequency was broadcast to every remaining human ship. Any captain could now turn their vessel into a bomb. Damaged ships, instead of retreating, flew directly into Helix formations. The chain reactions destroyed dozens of enemy vessels. Warlord Korath watched from a smaller command ship. His flagship was gone. His fleet was in chaos. His ground forces were being destroyed. He had conquered 100 worlds, but he had never seen anything like this. These humans would not stop fighting. They would not surrender. They would rather die than give up. For the first time in his life, Korath felt true fear. On the third day, he made a decision. He ordered his remaining ships to retreat. They had lost too much. Victory was no longer possible. Survival was all that mattered now. The Helix fleet limped away from Earth. They had arrived with 47 ships. They left with 11. Admiral Taiho watched them go. He felt no joy. Too many had died. Too much had been lost. But humanity had survived. 2 days later, rescue teams found Lieutenant Kang Sora floating in the Pacific. She was dehydrated and injured but alive. When she woke up, she asked only one question. Did they win? Taiho was there when she opened her eyes. He held her hand and smiled. Yes, he told her. They won. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. The Helix Empire had attacked Earth. The Helix Empire had lost. A species that had been marked for extinction had fought back and won. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Helix had been defeated. The Galactic Council gathered in emergency session. High Arbiter Velmos stood before the representatives of 100 species. His face showed anger and fear in equal measure. He demanded that all council members unite against the human threat. Humanity must be destroyed before they became too powerful. But the council was divided. Many species looked at what had happened and felt something new. They felt doubt. If the mighty Helix could not destroy Earth, what could? Perhaps humanity was not a threat to be eliminated. Perhaps humanity was a power to be respected. Ambassador Drexa rose to speak. She knew that helping humans was treason. She knew she might be executed for what she had done. She did not care. She told the council the truth. Humanity had never attacked anyone. They had only defended their home. They had been peaceful members of the council for 50 years. The council had betrayed them without cause. The council had tried to murder billions of innocent people, and now the council wanted to pretend they were the victims. Her words struck like lightning. Species began whispering among themselves. The council had made a terrible mistake. Everyone knew it. Few were willing to admit it. Over the next few weeks, several species withdrew from the Council. They did not want to be part of another attempt to destroy humanity. The ancient alliance began to crack. High Arbiter Velmos watched his power crumble, but could do nothing to stop it. On Earth, humanity counted its losses. Before the invasion, 12 billion people had lived on the planet. Now, only 8 billion remained. 4 billion had died in the battles. Cities had been destroyed. Families had been torn apart. The cost of survival was beyond imagination. Admiral Kim Tae-ho addressed the survivors from the ruins of Houston. He stood where the city center had once been. Now there was only rubble and ash. Behind him, workers were already beginning to clear the debris. He spoke simply and honestly. He said that humanity had won, but victory did not feel like celebration. They had lost too much. Too many empty chairs at dinner tables. Too many names that would never be called again. The pain would last for generations, but he also spoke of hope. He said that humanity had proven something important. They were not weak. They were not helpless. When the galaxy tried to destroy them, they had stood together and fought back. That strength would carry them into the future. Dr. Park Yuna continued her work in the laboratories. The Cascade technology that had saved Earth was now being adapted for peaceful purposes. The same energy waves that destroyed enemy ships could also power cities. They could create defensive shields. They could help humanity rebuild faster than anyone thought possible. Yuna was offered medals and honors. She refused them all. She said she was a scientist, not a hero. The real heroes were the soldiers who had given their lives. She would honor them by continuing to work. Colonel Shin Hana rebuilt Earth's intelligence network. Her agents spread across the galaxy, watching and listening. Humanity would never be caught by surprise again. Every threat would be identified long before it reached Earth. Hana also maintained contact with Ambassador Drexa. The alien had risked everything to help humanity. Now she was in hiding, hunted by the Council. Hana arranged for her to receive protection. Loyalty deserved loyalty. General Choi Dong-woo oversaw the reconstruction of the fallen cities. Houston was rebuilt first, as a symbol of human resilience. Where the old city had stood, a memorial was constructed. The names of every soldier who had died defending Earth were carved into walls of black stone. Millions of names, each one a story, each one a sacrifice. People came from around the world to visit the memorial. They touched the names and cried. They left flowers and photographs. They promised to remember. Lieutenant Kang Sora recovered slowly from her injuries. She spent 3 months in a hospital before she could walk again. When she finally left, she was greeted as a hero. People called her the Angel of Earth. They said she had saved humanity. Sora did not feel like a hero. She remembered her squadron members, all of them dead. She remembered the fear and pain of that final flight. She had nightmares about it every night. But she also remembered why she had fought. Her brother graduated from medical school that year. Her parents reopened their restaurant. The future she had fought for was real. That gave her strength to continue. She returned to service and became an instructor. She trained the next generation of pilots, teaching them what humanity had learned. They were not alone in the universe. The universe was dangerous. But with courage and sacrifice, they could survive anything. 10 years passed. The United Earth Fleet grew to 3,000 ships. Human colonies spread across 40 star systems. The technology captured from the Helix was studied and improved. Humanity was no longer a small species on a single world. They were a power that the galaxy could not ignore. The Helix Empire collapsed into civil war. Warlord Korath was executed by his own people for his failure at Earth. The empire that had conquered 1,000 worlds fell apart in less than a decade. The Galactic Council reformed without several of its original members. They were weaker now, more careful. They sent ambassadors to Earth, asking for peace. Admiral Taiho, now an old man with white hair, received them personally. He listened to their offers of friendship and cooperation. He did not smile. He told them that humanity remembered. They remembered the betrayal. They remembered the attempted genocide. They remembered every person who had died because the Council had decided humans did not deserve to live. Trust would have to be earned. It would take time. It would take proof that the Council had truly changed. But he also said something else. He said that humanity remembered being alone. They remembered what it felt like when the entire galaxy wanted them dead. If other species proved themselves worthy of trust, they would find no more loyal allies than humans. The ambassadors left with much to think about. Admiral Taiho signed his final order before retirement. It was called the Order for Humanity's Survival. It stated 3 simple principles. First, humanity would always remember what had been done to them. They would never forget the betrayal. Second, humanity would always be prepared. They would build ships and weapons. They would train soldiers. They would never be caught defenseless again. Third, humanity would show their enemies the same mercy that had been shown to them. None. The order was carved into stone at the entrance of Earth's military academy. Every new soldier saw it on their first day. Every graduating class spoke the words aloud. The galaxy had wanted humanity extinct. Instead, they had created something they would never be able to control. They had given humanity a reason to reach for the stars with fire in their hearts. The universe would never underestimate humanity again. And somewhere in the memorial gardens of Houston, among millions of names carved in black stone, flowers bloomed every spring. Life continued. Humanity endured. That was the greatest victory of all.